I never thought a Christmas flight would end with me sitting alone in an airport, gripping my phone like it might still take the words back. I'd spent $712 on the ticket, woke up before sunrise, waited nearly 40 minutes at baggage claim, and then the message came. "Oh, sorry, Dad, we already opened presents. You can fly back." No punctuation, no "love you," just a flat sentence, like I was some distant uncle she barely remembered. I read it twice. Then again, maybe something was missing. Maybe she'd follow up. She didn't. I sat down near gate 31, set my bag between my feet. The bench was plastic, cold, the kind that digs into your back no matter how you sit. The sun slanted in through the windows, soft and golden. It lit up families hugging, kids tugging at stuffed animals, voices high with excitement. A little girl ran by me, holding a box with candy canes inside. Her mom laughed and waved at someone off screen. I just stared at my screen. The words didn't even sting at first. They just hollowed me out, quietly, like something turning off inside. I'd brought her a few small gifts, nothing big. One for the boy, wrapped in old newspaper because I still believe the wrapping shouldn't cost more than what's inside. I even packed my nicer shirt, the one her mother once said made me look reliable. Now it sat in the bottom of my bag, folded for nothing. I typed a reply. "Thanks, sweetie. I'll use Christmas Day to visit my lawyer." Sent, then powered off the phone. No drama, no scene, just stillness. People bustled around me. Boarding announcements called names I didn't recognize. Somewhere, a kid was crying, probably tired. Somewhere else, a man laughed too loud. None of it touched me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Like I'd been erased. Quietly. And no one noticed I was gone. I stood up, hoisted my bag over one shoulder, and walked toward the exit. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't flying back. 3 days before that message, I was in my workshop, carving out the final letter of my grandson's name. The walnut was smooth under the blade, the kind that holds a polish without begging for it. I'd shaped the cars by hand, not with the lathe. Didn't want the edges too perfect. Things should feel held, not manufactured. His name was short, but the letters still took time. You only get one pass with real wood. Sandpaper hides a lot, but not dishonesty. The heater in the corner buzzed low. I was wearing the flannel Emma gave me years ago, back when she still signed her cards with little drawings. I didn't think about that until I pulled the sleeves up to avoid the glue, saw the stitching at the wrist where I'd fixed a tear last winter. She'd once said it made me look like a lumberjack. Now it just made me feel old. There were pine shavings all over the floor. The smell reminded me of the first Christmas after her mother died, when I tried to build Emma a dollhouse and ended up with uneven stairs and a crooked roof. She loved it anyway, said it looked like people really lived there. I remember thinking how proud her voice sounded that morning, how tightly she hugged my arm when I showed her how to open the little door. Now I was building something for her boy, hoping he'd run the cars over the track I'd painted, maybe make his own stories with it. She hadn't told me what he liked. She never really answered my messages, but I figured a train was safe. Trains still mattered to kids, didn't they? I'd skipped lunch that day, didn't even notice. My focus gets that way sometimes, locked in like a vice. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, maybe the neighbors. The afternoon light was slanting across the pegboard, turning the sawdust gold. I should have stopped then, should have wrapped the thing and set it aside. But I kept going. Added a little chimney on the engine, dotted on windows. Details she'd never asked for. It never crossed my mind that I might not get to hand it to him myself. Thanksgiving should have told me everything. It was Mark's parents, turn to host, a sprawling house in the suburbs with marble counters and a dining table that could seat 10 without a squeeze. Emma had asked if I'd come early to help carve the turkey, so I did. Brought my own knife even, the same one I used every year since she was a teenager. I showed up in time. Wore a sweater her mother would have approved of. Didn't come empty-handed. The smell of roasting sweet potatoes hit me before I even rang the bell. I remember thinking, maybe this year would feel more like it used to. I should have known better. They greeted me with politeness, the kind that keeps a boundary in place. Mark's mother offered a glass of wine but didn't wait for an answer. His father said something about football but didn't look at me when he said it. I stood there holding the pie I'd baked, trying not to see it as symbolic. Emma finally came out of the kitchen, cheeks flushed from the heat, or maybe the pressure. She gave me a quick hug, careful not to smear her makeup. "Hey, Dad," she said, "we're doing something a little different with the seating this year, okay?" I just nodded. It wasn't until everyone started taking their places that I realized where I was meant to sit. At the kids' table, fold-out legs, plastic chairs, cartoon turkey placemats. I looked down at the spot with my name on it, written in her handwriting, the same handwriting that used to draw hearts next to Daddy on birthday cards. Across the room, Mark's parents took the heads of the main table. Emma settled in beside them like it was natural. She looked over once and smiled, said, "It's just easier this way, Dad. Don't make it weird." I sat. Didn't argue. Ate what was on my plate. Made conversation with a child who didn't know who I was. Nodded along as someone spilled juice. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just a seat, that the day was still about family. But something stayed lodged in my chest from that afternoon. Not the words, not the food, just the quiet agreement in the room that I no longer belonged at the center of it. The day after I got back from the airport, I didn't unpack. I didn't eat. I went straight to the office. Not the kind with a desk and a nameplate. The room Caroline and I always called the study, though it mostly held receipts, old photo albums, and a safe tucked behind the file cabinet. She used to say, "Don't let the house forget what matters." The combination stuck in my fingers without thinking. Her birthday, the one she never let us skip. Inside, the manila folder with our will, some banking documents, and a single ring box she hadn't worn since her last surgery. I set the box aside. The trust paperwork sat underneath everything, thick, clipped, updated, 2 years before Caroline passed. I flipped through the pages slowly, letting the memory come back in pieces. The meetings, the revisions, her hand in mine when we signed the final version at Dana Caldwell's office. Emma never read these. She saw the envelope once, asked if it still said what it always said. I told her it did. That wasn't a lie. It still included her, just not the way she assumed. I hadn't looked at the details in a long time, but they were still there. Black ink, notarized, unchanged. The clause Caroline insisted on, the one that shifted everything if misuse or misconduct were suspected. We wrote it after seeing what happened to her cousin's estate. I remember her exact words, "Don't let anyone spend what they didn't earn." Behind the trust papers, I kept copies of deeds, not just for the main house, but a small rental property I'd bought back when work was still steady. Emma didn't know about that one. Never asked. I let her believe everything funneled through one account. Simpler that way. I sat back, let the weight of it all settle. The inheritance she assumed would just arrive wasn't guaranteed. The control she thought she held was on paper I still signed. She could humiliate me at Thanksgiving. She could forget I existed at Christmas. But she couldn't take what she didn't know she didn't own. And that, for the first time in a long while, gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Leverage. Dana Caldwell's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same cracked leather chairs. Same brass lamp with the loose pull chain. The kind of space that smelled faintly like paper, coffee, and decisions you couldn't take back. I'd sat in that room with Caroline more times than I could count. drafting every document that mattered after her diagnosis. Dana had been there through all of it. The revised will, the trust, the guardianship provisions, if Emma was still young when we passed. But Emma wasn't young anymore. And that's exactly why I was there. She looked up from the folder in front of her and pushed her glasses higher. "So," she said, voice even, "you want to walk me through this from the top?" I nodded, told her everything. From the airport message to the Thanksgiving seating, to the way Emma had started treating the idea of inheritance like a transaction already complete. Dana didn't react much. She never had. That was her strength. You could drop a bomb in front of her, and she'd just ask for the timestamp. When I got to the part about the trust language, I watched her finger trace the clause as she read it aloud. "If any trustee, beneficiary, or legal party shall be found to have misrepresented, misused, or withheld relevant financial disclosures." She stopped reading, looked up. "She assumes she's still the sole beneficiary?" I nodded once. "She's not," Dana said flatly. I leaned back, exhaled, not from relief, just confirmation. "She spent the last few years, what? Using your accounts? Cards? What kind of access are we talking about?" "Assumed access," I said. "Linked accounts. Passwords. She never returned. She uses the trust like it's her personal fallback." Dana didn't write anything yet. She just watched me, like she was adding up years in her head. "Okay," she said, finally opening a legal pad. "First thing, we initiate an audit. Quiet for now. I want statements, receipts, every transaction that smells even a little bit off. I'll handle the inquiry so nothing gets flagged to her side yet. You don't speak to her about this. Not until we've got leverage." "Done." She clicked her pen. "Good. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it all the way." We met again 2 days later, across the street from the courthouse. Dana preferred the coffee there, said it tasted burnt enough to keep the conversations honest. We sat by the window. No papers this time, just 2 mugs and the traffic crawling by in late afternoon silence. She asked what I wanted out of this. Not in a legal sense. She already knew the process. She meant the real answer. I stirred my coffee once, even though I never added anything to it. Just needed the motion. "I want to protect the inheritance," I said. "What's left of it. Not just the money, the meaning. Caroline and I didn't spend 40 years building a life just to watch it funneled into strollers with Italian names and vacations disguised as needs." Dana didn't say anything, just nodded once. So I kept going. "I want her to know there are limits, that there are still rules, that you don't get to treat people like they're past their expiration date just because it's convenient." She glanced down, ran her finger along the rim of her cup, then looked up again. "That's not a legal goal, Richard. That's a personal reckoning." Then write it under, motivations. Not everything has to be a motion to file. She smiled, faintly. "And your grandson?" I paused at that. "I want him raised by people who know the difference between giving and taking, between love and leverage. I don't expect him to understand that now, but maybe later, maybe when he's old enough to ask questions." Dana let the silence stretch for a few seconds before speaking again. "Then we'll start the audit. We'll track every cent, every purchase, every convenient oversight. If she's as careless as you say, we won't have to dig far." I nodded. "Good. You ready to make this public, if it has to be?" "I'm not ready for anything, but I'm not hiding from it either." She leaned back, folded her hands. "Then let's go to work." I looked out at the courthouse steps. I used to walk up those with Caroline when she filed for zoning approvals. She always believed in order, in building things by the book. It was time I honored that. It started with a receipt. I was clearing out my inbox, the way you do when sleep won't come and your hands need something to do. Most of it was junk. Newsletters I never signed up for, shipping updates from orders I didn't remember placing. Then I saw it. December 12th. Le Jardin de Luxe Spa and Resort, minus $5,000 paid, via trust account card. The subject line didn't say much, just your receipt. But the sender matched the account I'd opened with Dana over a decade ago, the one linked to the trust. I opened the email. The transaction was clean. Professional header, itemized services, full luxury weekend experience, dual suite, catering, massage treatments, premium add-ons. The billing address was mine. The guest name, Madison B. It didn't take long to connect the dots. Emma hadn't gone anywhere that weekend, according to her. When we spoke the week prior, she told me they were barely scraping by. Daycare costs, car repairs, marked between jobs again. But now here was a $5,000 charge buried behind a polite email, tied to a weekend I hadn't authorized, with a name I didn't recognize on paper but knew in reality. I clicked the link to view the full invoice. There was a note at the bottom. Gift certificate used at check-in. Issued via family member, E.M. There it was. Not spelled out, but close enough. She hadn't even used her own name. She gave a weekend at a luxury resort to her mother-in-law, used trust money to pay for it, and thought no one would notice, because technically, the guest wasn't her. $5,000. For someone else's comfort. Someone who'd never met Caroline. Someone who'd never stood beside me pouring concrete or folding laundry at midnight when Emma had the flu. I forwarded the receipt to Dana. Marked it high priority. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Just the kind of focus that settles in when you realize the crack in the wall isn't cosmetic, it's structural. This was the first one I caught. It wouldn't be the last. The resort receipt wasn't enough on its own. Not legally. But it gave me a timestamp, and that was all I needed. I logged into the credit card portal linked to the trust. It wasn't something I used often. I set it up years ago to keep Emma from needing to ask me for every little thing. At the time, it felt generous. Now it felt naive. I filtered the charges by date. December 11th through 13th. 10 entries. 3 gas stations, 1 restaurant, and 2 gift shops. All in the same zip code as the resort. Then, I opened her social media. Not Emma's, but Madison's. Her profile was set to public, like she wanted to be found. December 12th, a photo of her holding a glass of champagne by a heated pool. Caption, well-deserved. No mention of Emma, of course. But the reflection in the patio glass behind her showed a second figure holding a phone. The shape, the stance, it wasn't hard to guess. Emma had posted nothing that weekend. No photos, no updates, nothing to suggest she'd gone anywhere. I kept going. A second charge showed up on December 13th. Sundown Market, $318. I cross-referenced the address. A boutique shop known for upscale baby items. I remembered the name. Emma had once bragged about their imported rattles. I searched property records next. Madison's parents had recently refinanced their home. I found the documents online. One of the listed financial references was a new cosigner. Emma, M. Not Mark. Emma. It wasn't proof of theft, but it painted a picture. She was leveraging the trust money to move things around, reshuffling names, dates, obligations, in a way that kept her out of frame and others front and center. I compiled everything into a folder, printed the receipts, clipped the screenshots, copied the public records pages. I labeled it Week 1 Irregular Activity. Then I brought the folder to Dana the next morning, handed it over without ceremony. She didn't ask questions, she just said keep going. So I did, because the pattern was there. You just had to know where to look. I didn't call ahead. I knocked once and let myself in. She'd given me a key years ago and never asked for it back. The carpet was new. The walls had been repainted since my last visit. Modern colors, expensive ones. Emma came down the hall wiping her hands on a dish towel. Mark followed a few steps behind, saying nothing. She didn't smile. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I had time," I said. "Thought I'd drop by." She looked past me, then back. "You should have texted." I figured I wouldn't get a reply. She blinked once. "We've been busy. The holidays." "I flew in for Christmas," I said. "You were too busy to answer the door." Mark stepped forward, but I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on her. "I've been reviewing some trust documents," I continued. "Wanted to make sure everything was up to date." Her face didn't move, but her posture did. Weight shifted to her back foot. "You talked to a lawyer?" she asked, her voice clipped. I did. "Over what?" Her tone sharpened. "Some misunderstanding about a charge? You're blowing this up." I handed her a folder. "Just records. For clarity." Mark crossed his arms. "This is a lot of drama for one mistake. Then it shouldn't take long to sort out." Emma opened the folder, glanced through a few pages, then shut it quickly. "You're being paranoid," she said, quieter this time. I gestured to the couch. "Let's sit. We can go over it together." She didn't move. "You're overreacting. I'm prepared to follow through." "With what? You think a few spreadsheets mean something?" She laughed once, but it didn't carry. "This is family, Dad." Mark finally spoke. "Look, we've been talking. Maybe it's time to think about your next step. Something more stable. Maybe a retirement community." He handed me a brochure. Full color, laminated. I didn't take it. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You might want to reconsider." I looked at them both, then turned to leave. As I stepped outside, I heard her say behind me, "This could have stayed simple." It never was. We spread everything across the table. Statements, transaction logs, shipping confirmations. Dana worked silently, her red pen flicking across page after page, marking dates, flagging duplicates, underlining anything unusual. She didn't need small talk. She was at her best in the middle of patterns. The first standout was a December disbursement from the trust account, $2,100 labeled Home Repairs. It had a signed authorization, my signature, except it wasn't mine. Not even close. The slant was wrong. The spacing between letters looked deliberate, traced. Dana held it up. "You didn't sign this?" "No." She placed it in a separate folder, one marked in bold, "Suspected forgery." The next batch was digital, purchases through my Amazon account. I hadn't used it since Caroline passed. Didn't like the recommendations it kept pushing. Emma had never changed the login. Thousands in baby gear, all high-end brands. Rocker chairs, a white noise system, 2 identical monitors for 2 different rooms. All billed to my linked card. "I thought you said she used the trust, not your personal account," Dana said. "She did both. She wasn't hiding it, just relying on the fact you wouldn't check." We pulled browser history. Every order shipped to her house. Not a single note or message from her. Just charges, some of them automated monthly now. Diapers, organic snacks, some subscription to a toy box service. Dana cataloged everything, sorted purchases by category, assigned estimated resale value, and totaled the expenses. She didn't react when the number crossed $10,000. Then, $15,000. At $18,457, she stopped. "That's enough," she said. "For what?" "To file notice. We have misuse. We have a forgery. We have unauthorized access. All documented." She stacked the papers and tapped them into place. "Start writing down everything she says to you from now on. Verbatim. Even if it's in person. Especially then. If she pushes harder, we escalate." I nodded. Dana looked at me carefully. "If this keeps going, you understand what it might come to, right?" "I do." "Then be ready." I didn't answer, just picked up the folder and set it in my briefcase. There was no need to prepare. I already was. Dana called late in the afternoon. Her voice was clipped, not rushed. The kind of tone she used when something wasn't just wrong, but actionable. "There's a second will," she said. "Filed 2 months after your heart surgery. Not the version we drafted. This one hands full control of the trust to Emma, effective immediately upon your incapacitation." I didn't speak right away. "I've requested a certified copy from the records office," she continued. "But I already pulled the scanned version. It's been notarized, signed, dated, filed correctly. My signature? That's the problem. It's not yours." I drove to the UPS store the next morning to collect the document. The clerk handed it over like it was any other packet. Brown envelope. Standard weight. No urgency. Just paper that could shift the ground under someone's entire life. Inside, the revised will. Not our formatting. Different font. Different notary. Someone we never used. Dana had already marked the inconsistencies. My name spelled correctly, but the ink on the signature line didn't match the surrounding text. Even the pressure was off. A flat line where I always pressed harder on the first letter. She included a comparison sheet, originals versus this version, side by side. The difference wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, intentional, professional maybe, or just careful. I ran my thumb along the edge of the page. The language had changed. The clause about trustee misconduct was gone. The fallback beneficiaries, charities Caroline had chosen, erased. In their place, sole trustee powers to Emma. No restrictions. No review clauses. No oversight. Dated 62 days after I left the hospital. Dana's note at the bottom was underlined twice. "This signature is fraudulent. We'll build around that." I walked back to my car with the envelope in one hand, keys in the other. A forged will doesn't scream. It whispers. It sits quietly in a drawer until the person it erases stops being useful. I placed the document in my glove compartment and locked it, not out of fear, out of awareness. What Emma had filed wasn't just a betrayal. It was a plan. The house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get used to, the kind that presses in from the edges. I stood at the stove, reheating the last of the holiday ham. The smell filled the room fast. Cloves, a hint of brown sugar, the way Caroline used to make it. She always said food tasted better the second day. The microwave ticked down. I leaned on the counter. My phone was charging in the hallway, screen dimmed. I hadn't checked it since dinner. Didn't want to. The framed photo sat where it always had, near the paper towel holder. Emma at 5, in her reindeer pajamas, hair sticking out in every direction. We'd just come in from sledding that morning. She was holding a hot chocolate with both hands, grinning like the cup weighed more than she did. It had been on that counter for years. One of those pictures you stop seeing until it suddenly looks like something you don't recognize anymore. I picked it up, not because I was angry, not because of the will, or the charges, or the way she stood beside Mark like they were already the ones in charge. Just because I didn't know what I was looking at anymore. I turned the frame over. The cardboard back came loose easily. No inscription, just the photo, glossy and sharp. For a second, I thought about tearing it, but I didn't. I flipped it face down instead and left it there. The microwave beeped. I sat at the table and ate in silence. The plate too hot, the meat dry. Nothing tasted the way it used to. There was a coat of dust on the edge of the windowsill. I'd meant to clean it a week ago. Never got around to it. Across the room, the train set I'd carved sat on the credenza. Still wrapped, still waiting. No one had asked if I was okay. No one had called to see how the trip went. No message, no apology, just absence. That was the cost. Not the money, not even the lie, the distance. The kind you don't measure in miles. I sent the text on a Tuesday morning. Let's talk things over together. Bring Mark and the in-laws. I want peace. Emma responded an hour later with a thumbs up and a line that read, "Glad you're finally being reasonable." I didn't answer that. The VFW hall was a neutral place. No history, no memories. Just folding chairs, muted carpet, and a coffee machine that hadn't worked in years. I had reserved the back conference room under my name. Dana would be there. So would a notary, one she trusted. The invite wasn't confrontational. The tone was casual, like a man trying to de-escalate. That's how I needed it to sound. Any hint of formality and Emma would pivot. Any sign of pressure, and Mark would pull her out of it. But this time, they wouldn't be walking into a conversation. They'd be walking into documentation. Dana prepared packets, each one labeled, tabbed, indexed. No accusations, just facts, dates, transactions, signatures. A short agenda stapled to the top. Review of estate matters, clarification meeting. We arranged the room carefully. 6 chairs around a rectangular table, 1 screen for slides, 2 stacks of printed exhibits. The notary sat to the side, clipboard ready, seal and ink pad within reach. I rehearsed once with Dana the night before. We didn't speak much, just went over the flow. They'd arrive, we'd greet them. No tension. Then the presentation would begin. Straightforward, line by line. No anger, no surprises. I didn't tell Emma what we were bringing. Didn't tell her who else would be there. She wouldn't ask. Not if she thought she had the upper hand. The day before the meeting, I stood in the hallway of my house holding the train set. I thought about bringing it. Just setting it down on the table at the end. I didn't. That wasn't what this day was about. I placed it back on the shelf and checked my folder one last time. Nothing left to fix. Only things left to reveal. They arrived 10 minutes late. Emma came in first, coat still buttoned, followed by Mark holding the door for his parents. Everyone smiled, the kind of smile you use when you believe you're walking into a misunderstanding, not a reckoning. Mark's father offered a handshake. I returned it with a nod. No warmth, no need. Patricia commented on the space, said it reminded her of, quote, community planning meetings. Emma glanced around once, confused, but said nothing. Dana greeted them from her seat. Thanks for coming. We'll keep this brief. They took their places. I handed each of them a printed packet, stapled, clearly labeled. No room for interpretation. Mark flipped through his immediately. Gerald just stared at the front page. Emma didn't open hers at all. Dana stood. This isn't about feelings, she said, clicking the remote. This is about documentation. We're here to clarify financial decisions involving the trust of Richard M. She pointed to the first slide. A timeline of disbursements. Itemized. Color-coded. Next slide. Side-by-side comparison of signatures. Mine versus the one from the forged will. Patricia shifted in her seat. Emma leaned forward, then pulled back. Mark cleared his throat but said nothing yet. Slide 3. Luxury transactions billed to the trust. Each one cross-referenced with receipts and corresponding bank statements. This is a factual review, Dana said. Everything you're seeing was pulled from account records, tax documents, and purchase logs. Nothing here is speculative. I stayed silent. I wasn't there to argue. The fourth slide. Audio transcript excerpt from Emma's recorded call to a friend. He's old school. He won't even notice. Dana didn't comment on it. Just let it sit on the screen for a few seconds, then clicked forward. Emma opened her packet. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Mark looked toward the notary for the first time. That was the moment the tone shifted. The notary sat still, pen ready, watching everything. Gerald pushed his packet aside. I think we need to discuss this privately. No, Dana replied. You'll discuss it with record. That's why you were invited here. No shouting. No raised voices. But the air had changed. because now they understood this wasn't a conversation. It was evidence. I didn't speak first. Dana placed a printed copy of the revised will at the center of the table. The signature line was circled in red. Next to it, a certified comparison sheet with my verified signatures from multiple documents, banking forms, DMV renewals, the original trust filing. "This signature," she said, tapping the forged one, "is not authentic. We've had it examined. The notary on this document is no longer licensed. Their logbook was never submitted. This filing is fraudulent." Emma shifted in her seat. "I don't," she started, but Dana held up a hand. "We're not asking questions. We're presenting findings." Slide 1 came back on the screen. A spreadsheet of trust expenditures, itemized. Line 12, $5,000 to Les Jardins Spa, booked under another name, paid with trust funds. Line 23, luxury infant gear, ordered using Richard's Amazon account, shipped to your home. Total, $18,457. Dana flipped to the appendix in their packets. Every transaction is supported by a receipt or delivery confirmation. All were billed directly or indirectly to trust resources without authorization. Emma looked toward Mark. He gave nothing back. "We've also included audio," Dana said. "This transcript is a portion of a call you made to a personal contact." She read aloud. "He's old school. He won't even notice." Emma's mouth opened, then closed. Mark interrupted. "You're using private conversations now? That's a reach." "The call was made on a shared line," Dana replied. "State law allows recording if one party consents. Richard was that party." The notary nodded without speaking, confirming the legality. Patricia folded her arms. Gerald leaned back, packet untouched. Dana handed one final document across the table, a formal notice of intent to challenge the forged will and suspend all trustee powers pending court review. "You're filing this?" Emma asked, voice quieter now. Dana didn't answer. "I did. It's already filed." Emma looked down at the packet again. Her hands didn't move. The notary recorded the moment. Name, time, presence, summary of the contents distributed and reviewed. No shouting, no denials, just acknowledgement. Written, witnessed, documented. We weren't arguing anymore. We were proceeding. Dana stood as she closed the folder. No dramatics, no raised tone. "Based on what has been presented," she said, "we're moving forward on 3 fronts." She held up 3 fingers. 1. The forged will is being challenged. A handwriting expert's statement has been attached to the filing. The original notary's failure to maintain a valid commission nullifies their role in any official capacity. Emma looked at Mark again. Still no reaction. 2. The trust has been frozen, effective immediately. The accounts are flagged. Any withdrawals, automatic or manual, will require third-party authorization. She paused. 3. We've submitted a petition to remove Emma M. as trustee due to confirmed misuse of funds and breach of fiduciary duty. Patricia opened her mouth, but Dana kept speaking. "If the court approves, and we expect it will, a neutral third party will be assigned. Financial control will be removed from the family entirely pending full audit and redistribution review." Mark finally leaned forward. "You can't just strip control like that. This is family business." Dana turned to me. "Richard?" I nodded once. "It's not family business when someone forges my name." Mark stood. "This is ridiculous." Dana didn't flinch. "The process is already in motion. You're not here for approval, you're here for notice." Emma's voice came low, almost inaudible. "You're punishing me for a mistake." Dana opened a folder, slid a final document across the table. "This isn't punishment. This is legal recourse. The threshold was crossed. This is the result." Emma didn't touch the document. Mark sat down again, slower this time. Gerald still hadn't opened his packet. Dana gathered her materials, then looked at the notary. All participants have been recorded as present. All materials were delivered in person. Statements were received without contest. The notary nodded once. Dana turned to me. "You ready?" I stood, folded my copy of the paperwork, and placed it in my briefcase. "I already did," I said. We walked out without another word. There was nothing left to explain. Only steps left to complete. The sun was starting to set when we stepped outside. Dana walked ahead, already on the phone with the auditor. The notary trailed behind, storing documents in a flat leather case. I waited by the front steps of the hall as the others filed out. Emma exited last. Her face was flushed. Not anger. Something closer to realization. She didn't look at me as she passed, just kept her eyes forward. Her coat was half-zipped, hair pulled back like she hadn't expected the wind. Mark followed 2 paces behind her, quiet. He glanced at me but said nothing. He had no leverage now, and he knew it. Patricia and Gerald didn't wait for them. They walked ahead at full pace, down the path to the parking lot, not speaking to either of them. Gerald hit the unlock button on their car before they reached it. Patricia opened the passenger door and got in without turning around. Emma stopped briefly near the sidewalk. Not to say anything, just to stand still. Mark stood beside her, trying to read her posture. She didn't speak. I didn't either. One of the veterans came out behind us. Older guy, heavy coat, cane in one hand, coffee in the other. He paused when he saw me. "You handled that clean," he said. "They'll think twice before pulling that again." I nodded. Nothing more. He tapped his cane twice on the concrete and moved toward the lot. Emma and Mark finally started walking. No words between them, just distance. Their car pulled out 5 minutes later. Emma sat on the passenger side, staring straight ahead. When it was gone, I sat on the concrete bench by the door. Same spot I'd waited during Caroline's memorial service reception. Different reason now, but the same silence. There was no victory to mark, no moment to celebrate. But there was separation, clear, defined, witnessed. Not just emotional anymore, legal. And for the first time in months, the consequences weren't mine to carry. They were theirs. I arrived just after opening. The clerk's office wasn't busy yet. A few people in line for vehicle titles. A couple disputing a citation near the window. I walked straight to the probate counter and handed over the folder Dana had prepared. The woman took it without comment, flipped through the contents, checked the timestamp. "This is for the active case," she asked. "Yes." "Supplement to existing motion, confirming forged document and filing for trustee reassignment." She nodded, stamped the top page, then scanned it into the system. "Effective as of today," she said. "The revised will is suspended under review. Control of the estate passes to the interim trustee until further ruling. You'll receive a formal confirmation within 72 hours. That was it. No gavel, no courtroom, just process. Behind her, a printer hummed out the filing receipt. She handed it to me. I folded it once and placed it in my coat pocket. Outside, the wind had picked up. I crossed the street to the bank's legal services department and gave them the same notice. The manager verified my ID, updated the account restrictions, and added the court's designation for oversight. All withdrawals blocked. All charges frozen. Nothing else could move. From there, Dana filed the civil motion for financial recovery. The number was exact, $18,457, with supporting documentation attached for each line item. The clerk added it to the case log and printed the receipt. "We'll notify the respondent within 5 business days," she said. I didn't ask who'd deliver it. It didn't matter anymore. The forged will was nullified. The financial doors were closed. A neutral trustee, court-approved and unknown to either side, would take over by week's end. Emma no longer had access. Mark couldn't use her to leverage it. And the trust, the one Caroline and I spent years shaping, was no longer in danger of being drained by people who saw it as a convenience instead of a responsibility. The filings were clean, not dramatic, no special markings, just paper. But paper, signed and sealed, changes everything.